Hello friends, welcome to EPG Pathshala. Today we are going to discuss the importance of theory in research. This lecture is a part of your paper on communication research. Research is a set of strategies and procedures agreed upon by the scientists for gathering reliable information under controlled conditions of observation in such a way that the objective conclusions can be reached within a minimum of error, as per De Fleur and Dennis 1991. While this is a definition of research using a scientific quantitative approach, it highlights the importance of reliability, validity, method, empirical observation, and most important of explanations. The explanations that are applicable to communication research using other approaches as well. This lecture focuses on the crucial role played by these explanations. So before we dive into the details of the research process, let us take a step back and take a big picture view of what it means to conduct the research and reflect on the larger issues. These issues inform our everyday actions as researchers in various tangible and intangible ways. So the question now arises, why do we conduct research, and what is the goal of the community of researchers that we are training ourselves to join in? And the single most important goal of the scientific research is the theoretical developments. Understanding why do we research will help us at every stage of the research process and guide our decision making. It will certainly help us to answer the so what questions of the research. That is, when a research study is completed and the results are analyzed, we will be able to understand what the results mean. That is, we will be able to see the larger context within which the results fit in. As De Fleur and Dennis in 1991 observed, perhaps the clearest feature of basic research is that it is not undertaken to increase anyone's profits, and the purpose of such investigations is simply to advance knowledge. What is a theory, and why do we consider theory to be such a crucial goal for all research activities? Let us explore now the definition of theory in detail. So the question arises, what is a theory? At its most fundamental level, we can think of a theory as any organized set of concepts, explanations, and principles of some aspects of human experience, as per Littlejohn and Foss 2010, cited in Perrin and Davis. Maxwell in 2000 expands this definition to include predictions when he observes not only a system of law like propositions, but as any systematic set of ideas that can help make sense of a phenomenon, guide action, or predict a consequence. As we know, a phenomenon is a situation or an occurrence or an event that we are interested in explaining. For example, the continuing success of media content related to fantasy and mythology, whether it is in the form of books, television shows, animation, films, and even video games. So from both the definitions, we can see that theory then is a way of explaining a phenomenon in such a way that we can understand it to such an extent that we can use this understanding to make predictions. In communication research, given our central focus on the media, we envisage theory to consist of general statements about the nature, working, and effects of mass communication based on systematic and objective observations of media and other relevant factors. Now, the importance of the theory. The question now arises, what is the importance of the theory? About 75 years ago, in 1943, the famous social psychologist Kurt Lewin noted that there is nothing as practical as a good theory. We see the truth of this statement reflected in our field of communication research. Well-developed theories such as Albert Bandura's 1989 social cognitive theory have gone beyond the academic world of the lab, conference, and the research journal to actually play a practical role in the design of the entertainment education programs, which have been designed to effect changes in knowledge, attitudes, behaviors, and the practices of the viewers. As Arvind Singhal, a leading research on entertainment education, points out, here an example of a theory that has been utilized in a practical context to address problems that national governments face, serious problems such as population size, issues of gender, literacy, and addresses them in a way that you can get the most mileage out of these programs, as per Smith in 2002. That is, the explanations provided in this theory are so close to the heart of the phenomenon of how audiences learn from the media that researchers were able to confidently predict how this learning would occur. So, the program producers were then able to use these explanations to design programs that could maximize these learnings. And the fact that these learnings took place was also verified by the researchers such as Singhal and Rogers. Thus, despite the statement by De Fleur and Dennis in 1991 that the aim of the academic research is simply to advance knowledge, we find that while the knowledge and the explanations, that is, the theories developed by communication researchers, help us gain insights into the human nature that can also contribute positively in responding to the social issues. So, as a young researchers, we need to keep in mind that our efforts in research need to be directed towards developing explanations that get close to the reality of the phenomenon. And if we conduct research studies that are merely descriptive and do not present explanations that help in developing the theory, our work will have all the trappings of research but will remain a missed opportunity. Understanding the importance of theory will help us understand the importance of reviewing the literature so that we can situate our research studies within a theoretical context and strengthen our methods and analysis, eventually leading us to a meaningful conclusions. Now shifting to determining what is a good research. So how do we then determine what is a good research? When we begin the process of conducting a research study, we conduct a review of the research literature in that particular area, and we have to consider how to evaluate the journal articles that we read. Students sometimes feel that a research study where the hypothesis is supported is a good study and are disappointed when they read an article where the data does not support the hypothesis. However, a hypothesis that is not supported by the data is actually useful in that it reveals an explanatory dead end and directs us towards more fruitful directions. Thus, whether a hypothesis is supported or not is not any indicator of whether a research study is of any value or not. And similarly, another misconception that studies where effect sizes are small are less valuable than the studies where effect sizes are large. But in reality, it is not the size of the effect that matters, but how significant it is in the statistical terms that is more important. A basic criterion for evaluating a research study during the course of a literature review is the relevance of our research questions in terms of conceptual and operational variables and the methods that are used. A second criterion is if it meets the accepted standards in terms of methods, that is the instrument reliable or the results valid and so on. And when we find an article that is relevant and meets the accepted standards, how do we know if it is a good or not good? And continuing in the same vein, a related question is, what should we do to make our research study a good research study? The most important feature of a research that is valuable is its contribution towards a theory. And if a particular research study is able to arrive at an explanation that paves the way for future research, then that research is a valuable research. Research may be relevant and may meet accepted standards from a methods point of view, but if it does not contribute towards the theory, then that research study has missed an opportunity and cannot be considered to be a good research, since it does not help in developing explanations. Now let us discuss intersubjectivity. We learned that one of the criteria for evaluating a research study is if it meets the accepted standards for research. But how are these accepted standards decided? Research standards are decided by the community of researchers as a whole. Let us pause for a minute and imagine a spectrum from an objective fact which is evident to everyone irrespective of space and time, such as the sun rises in the east, to a subjective observation such as an actor looked great in a particular film. And somewhere on this spectrum, in the middle between an objective fact and a subjective observation, lies intersubjective agreement, where a group of people agree on something and accept it as a standard. Take citation for instance. Researchers in communication accept the use of APA guidelines to cite authors by last name and the year of the publication in brackets within the text of a research article to signal that the author's ideas are being used in that sentences. This is certainly an example of an accepted standard, which is the result of an intersubjective agreement among a community of researchers. Similarly, sample sizes, level of statistical significance, intercoder reliability levels are all the issues on which intersubjective agreement determines the accepted standards. And these standards need to be met if a research study is to be presented at a conference or published in a journal, and this is decided through a process of peer review. Let us now discuss the process of peer review and its importance to the research. So we will start with what is a peer review. In order to be a part of the research community, we follow certain systematic procedures that are accepted by the members of this community. And when we complete a research study, it is this community that is interested in the results. And those results are shared with this community through conference presentations and articles published in research journals. So, when a researcher responds to call for papers and submits a paper to a conference, it is reviewed by two or more fellow researchers, and they take the decision on whether the paper should be accepted, and if yes, what edits are to be done in order for it to be brought in line with the accepted standards of the communication research. Peer reviews are typically done blind, that is, neither the reviewer nor the author of the paper is aware of the author's identity. And this process of blind peer review is an attempt to maintain fairness in the process of research. Reviewers volunteer their time and are not paid, since it is seen as a part of their service to the community as well as to maintain the integrity of the process. So now shift to what is conference presentations. Conference presentations offer researchers the opportunity to share their research with their peers and receive feedback and constructive criticisms. So, when a research study is completed, a researcher writes it up as a research paper and sends it to a conference where it is subjected to the process of the peer review. It should be noted that not all the papers that are submitted are essentially accepted. Conferences such as the annual conference of the International Communication Association, referred to as ICAA, a premier conference for communication researchers, share their acceptance rate with paper submitters, and it is generally below 50% of the submissions and often much less than that. Such kinds of conferences are typically organized by theoretical divisions and divided into parallel and plenary sessions. Each session may feature a panel of 5 paper presenters who are given about 10 to 20 minutes each to present their findings, generally with the support of a visual presentation such as a PowerPoint to display graphs, photographs, and other key findings. The conference presentations offer the researchers the crucial opportunity to network with their peers, and the postgraduate students typically complete multiple research papers in the course of their study. Submitting them to conferences early on will help the students certainly receiving the feedback that will help in the next stage in the life of their research study publications. Many conferences feature separate student paper divisions and even award prizes for the best student papers, and any research presentation is a valuable addition to a researcher's resume. So, what a publication is? Based on the feedback received, researchers edit their papers and submit it to the research journals. Research journals have their own blind peer review process and acceptance rates. They are ranked on the basis of the impact factors, that is, a ratio of the number of times an article from that journal have been cited to the number of articles published in that particular journal. The various organizations like Google Scholar and Scopus publish rankings of these journals. Google Scholar's ranking is based on an index called the H5 index, which is also a variation of the impact factor ratio described above. The top ranked international journals in communication in the year 2012 to 2016 according to Google Scholar's ranking include New Media and Society, Journal of Communication, Communication Research, International Journal of Communication, Journal of Broadcasting and Electronic Media, Media, Culture and Society, Public Opinion Quarterly, Journalism and Mass Communication Quarterly, and the Communication Theory. These research papers are also published as book chapters in the edited books. Let us try and summarize what we discussed in the lecture. We examined some of the larger issues that guide our work as researchers, and we begin by understanding that the theory consists of in-depth explanations that can be used to make certain predictions. The theory certainly extends our knowledge and can also have a practical use in interventions in social issues. Research study that meets accepted standards of research is valued because of the contribution that it makes to the theory. And the accepted standards arise from intersubjective agreements among members of the research community. So, blind peer review is the process used to ensure that accepted standards are maintained in conferences and in publications as well. And keeping all this in mind, we turn to the actual process of doing research in the modules that follow. So, do attempt the questions in the self-evaluative quadrant, and for further reading suggestions, please refer to the third quadrant also. Thank you.